Hi, welcome back, everyone. Integrating Real Perspective, my film review corner on YouTube. And I am going to do a review on The Quiet, a 2005 film from Burnt Orange Productions that I decided to do a review on because of a recent discussion about Elisha Cuthbert at this concert that I had attended recently. A bunch of friends of mine from college that I attended in the mid to late 2000s were there. One of them in particular was playing guitar with his band. And it was a really nice coffee shop, which also doubled as a bar too. So I was talking with a dear friend of mine who is also my soul sister that I've known for almost 20 years about her wife who has the same sun, moon, and rising sign as Elisha Cuthbert. So both of their astrology signs are Sagittarius sun, Gemini moon, and Leo rising, which astrologically speaking was pretty awesome. The barista bartender overheard my conversation and instantly brought up that she was a fan of the gorgeous blonde Canadian actress who was my high school crush at the time. And then she brought up a movie about a girl who pretends that she's deaf while being adopted uh, after her father died, and immediately a light bulb lit up, and I recognized, oh, you're talking about The Quiet, that super obscure indie film she did in 2005, which was a year after what was actually my number one favorite movie for the longest time, The Girl Next Door, which if you've followed my YouTube channel, I'm sorry, my Facebook page, back in 2020, I compiled together a pandemic list of my top 15 favorite movies, which I considered to be perfect. Every beat, every note was well placed in those 15 movies. And number one on that list was The Girl Next Door. For 18 years, though, I thought I was the only person in the entire state of Wisconsin who saw that movie, The Quiet, let alone remember that movie. And take note, 18 years. Now, while I have the film as listed as having been slated for a 2005 release, this was only its Sundance Film Festival showing. In fact, yeah, this just to confirm here, to make sure that that's what it was. So, yeah, as a matter of fact, that was the Toronto Film Festival had aired this film on September 12th, 2005, but it did not hit US theaters until August, gotta check again. It was August 25th, 2006. That's when it got an international release here in the States. And that was the year that I saw it. I was in college at the time. It was, I remember, a pretty cold, gray winter, no, fall. It was a very cold, overcast, gray fall, autumn day when I went to see that movie. And yeah, before I get into that movie, let's talk about Elisha Cuthbert before I jump into this film. This girl was like the perfect embodiment of feminine beauty for me growing up. She just, oh my goodness, she had this golden, glowing aura around her. Like she was this gorgeous golden stallion that everyone wanted to come up and touch and pet and caress. even just playing Kim Bauer on 24, the daughter of CTU agent Jack Bauer, he himself is a Sagittarius and a Canadian actor. I'm referring to Kiefer Sutherland, that is. Kiefer Sutherland, who happens to be a Sagittarius and is also Canadian, like Elisha Cuthbert. How is it that those two happen to be on set together like that? It's just very interesting how the universe brought together those two stars. And then seeing her in theaters when she played Danielle, the porn star in The Girl Next Door, that was quite an event that highlighted my summer after graduating high school. That will need to be a film to review sometime in the near future. And since I'm binge watching 24 right now, too, I may do a video highlighting the best of her career at some point. But The Quiet was an interesting movie for me to see. Elisha is taken on a much darker and much more disturbing role here compared to her innocent and uninhibited risk taker in The Girl Next Door. I was aware of the basic premise of the film walking into it, probably from a newspaper review back when Dwayne Dudek was working for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. For those who remember that time, he was the he was the top of the line film reviewer for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Was always known for doing very, very elaborate and very, very colorful film reviews at the time. And I actually took a college film studies class with him that he taught back in 2007, I believe. But judging from the poster art of the film, with Elisha and Camila and a black background with Elisha whispering something in Camila's ear and having a look of shamelessness while looking like she's just shared some taboo secrets, something just really overly sexual or just really really, naughty. It just seemed like Elisha was cast in an outsider role here. This was definitely an outsider role for her to play in. A cheerleader with a seemingly perfect life who hides a silent secret. It was also interesting when watching that film that she was a girl who had no interest in boys, which, of course, when I get into the story, you'll see why that is. This film was a somewhat autobiographical film for me for the time it was released, which I'm going to break down here in this review. I think because director Jamie Babbitt is bisexual, the subject matter of the film can apply to men as easily as women, although the two main leads of this film are females. The other lead, of course, being Camilla Bell. Both leads play the girls Dot and Nina. Nina, Elisha's character, is a cheerleader who seems to have it all. Popular, surrounded by very sociable friends. Given the title, hottest girl in high school that everyone wants to date, everyone wants to bang her, or at least that's what one of her friends, who is in fact a closet lesbian herself, she just likes to say that all the time about Nina. That is until Camilla's character Dot steps into the picture. Camilla is also a pretty great actress in some part too. However, aside from like a little bit part in Lost World Jurassic Park as an 11-year-old girl, which I thought she was pretty good in, really the only other film that I saw her in that I took any interest in was Push from 2009. Highly recommended film, by the way, if you're a huge fan of the X-Men franchise. Otherwise, like looking at some of her other work, uh, like she's good when she's placed in the right roles, but I'm not gonna say that like I would recommend that many of her films. I would definitely recommend this film, and I would recommend Push. If you're a Jurassic Park fan, to definitely check out Lost World, Jurassic Park as well. When Doc comes along, dark secrets gradually unravel. Nina has an incestuous relationship with her dad, Paul, played by Martin Donovan. Oh yeah, Martin Donovan. Boy, huh, how interesting that he was chosen to play the creepy father role, since he would also play virtually the same kind of role in the TV show Ghost Whisperer, but with a slightly altered context. His relationship with Melinda Gordon was of the same nature, but he definitely goes to extremes in this movie here with his relationship with Nina. The atmosphere of the show is very much like Ghost Whisperer, actually, especially the Mark Snow-esque music, which is done by Jeff Rona, who composes a pretty lethargic soundscape that lulls you into a very hypnagogic state. And it just like covers everything with this slightly foggy, hazy outlining to everything, which I thought was pretty impressive. Like the auditory counterpart to the visual. It was an overcast summer day today, which made it the perfect backdrop to review this film. I mean, it's nightfall where I am right now, but it was pretty gray in the skies today, especially given that this is mid-August right now. I'm still at the peak of summer. It's that this is definitely a film that um I wouldn't say that it's like the ideal type of summer film. Although I will say that this film does give a nod to the Virgin Suicides. Um, in one particular scene, the foot fetish scene between Nina and her dad in particular, very very similar to that of Kirsten Dunst and Josh Hartnett in that movie, The Virgin Suicides. That being said, though, yeah, and I know this is gonna be a very unpopular opinion, but I take pride in my unpopular opinions, and I say that The Quiet is a better movie than The Virgin Suicides. The Virgin Suicides was a very abysmally depressing movie. Sorry, Sofia Coppola. I love your work, but not a fan of that movie. Yeah, I mean, I love the soundtrack to that film by Air, but nah, The Quiet was, in my opinion, an even more positive movie, I would say. But um, I will say that this is a movie that definitely fluctuates between different genres. Like in one regard, it's like it's a high school teen drama. In another regard, it's a psychological thriller. And there's even a little bit of the horror genre sprinkled throughout the film. Basically, like everyone in this film, not just the core main characters, like the two parents of Nina Deer and then Dot and Nina herself, but I'm also talking about like Nina's friends too. Um, yeah, it's like all these characters, Connor as well, by the way, the boy that Nina has a romantic interest in, but he has more of an interest for Dot. Like even he's got some really, really cringy secrets to let out. So it's like th this film goes really raw when it comes to drawing out these characters' deepest, darkest inner natures. But walking into this film, it starts off quite brilliantly, with Dot narrating about her wish to be invisible. She says that when one person is in the room, she feels like half a person. When two people are in the room, she feels like a quarter of herself is there. And when she's in a crowd of people, she feels like she's not even there at all. This is very telling as she vividly communicates her mindset about what it's like just wanting to live in silence, like a specter just witnessing the people around her and their secret inner lives. Like she finds strength in silence. From there, we learn that Dot has been adopted by Nina Deer's family because her father was recently killed in an accident where a truck just rammed into him while he was crossing the street. Now, to be frank, even from the first time I saw this film in a dark theater at the Oriental in the fall of 2006, I found that Dot's narration works in fits and starts. Sometimes, like, there's definitely something that I can feel from her words. Other times, though, it's rather cringeworthy. Yeah. The opening scene that I just illustrated there about her wish to be invisible is one of the better examples. But another scene that I found myself grimacing at was the scene where she's recalling the events leading up to her father's death. We were eating French fries. I was playing with the ketchup on my plate. Ow! WTF? And she's saying this while she's sticking her fingers in her father's ashes, this box of ashes that the remains of her dad, and licking them like they were baking powder. Ooh. And that was meant to sound like a candid moment. Listen to this example of her trying to be dramatic and evoke deep meaning. I used to hold my breath underwater for long periods of time. My father took me to the YMCA Saturday mornings, submerged in the pool. I heard nothing but my own heartbeat echoing against the water. I would have stayed underwater forever if my father hadn't been waiting for me in the bleachers by the diving pool. Oh, yeah, by the way, and Nina comes in and confesses another morbid secret. I killed my goldfish when I was little, Dot. I had 6 of them, and I cut them in half with scissors. Back to Dot. When someone is waiting for you, you have to come up for air. I was braver when I was a kid. And I'm trying to speak these words with the same sincerity that Camilla Bell did in that scene. And well, while I will admit that these words do look better on paper than when they are actually pretty poetic, and I do feel like they evoke a sense of a distant memory, a longing for a better pastime. However, these lines are ruined by the sound of Camilla's rather monotonous drone in her voice. But yet with even those moments, the film moves as smoothly as a brook or a river and makes different emotional curves around the bend. It takes different emotional curves around the bend. And then you arrive at a location that's just beautiful and evocative. I mean, the scene where both Nina and Dot are burying this dress that has blood on. Pardon me if I'm speaking out of out of sequence here, but like and then they're walking together down the river together. Um, Obviously, I know I'm speaking, in fragments as far as the story goes, but I just had to give an illustration of how that scene that, where they're walking down the river um after the prom and with a beautiful full moon going on that night. That was a really nice scene, especially after all that emotional drudgery and intense drama that was going on before that. But obviously, I'm going to start getting into the story itself and highlighting the the main plot points frame by frame. There's really not much to say now about the story at this point after Dot moves in with the Deer family. Just that you start seeing key characters show off what monsters they really are on the inside. No one is really exempt here, not even Nina. Even in spite of her delicate, angelic, glowing figure, her skin, her skin, especially when she's just in bra and panties, looks so flawless that she must be her own beautician or dermatologist. She reveals this rather frightening side to her that eclipses whatever empathy I may have had for her early on. I wanted to feel bad for Nina being so cold and heartless simply because of her very incestuous relationship with her dad and having to compensate for that, covering up that wound by coming off as the super popular, stuck up high school cheerleader. Typical teenage behavior. Especially, that one instance of Paul calling Nina up at school just out of the blue when she's finishing up with lunch and asking her, "How are you doing? Are you wearing your cheerleader outfit?" And other such gross questions. Paul even admits to Dot when he walks in while she's sleeping and confesses that he's sick and that he thought once Dot moved in with the family, things would have changed for him. That her being there would have given Nina a chance to bond with a sister figure. And it's not really clear why Paul thinks Dot's presence would have helped to curb his incestuous desires towards his own daughter. But if I had to guess, it would be because Nina would then have a sister to bond with. Now, I'm not the least bit judgmental towards incest. Even the movie Zathura explores incest in a rather playful way between Kristen Stewart's character Lisa and Dax Shepard's older version of her younger brother Walter, played by Josh Hutcherson. How she goes from hating her brother's guts to falling in love with a future astronaut version of him, which later reshapes her relationship with her present day with his present day form, and how she becomes kinder to him from then on. That's not the case here, though. In the case with Paul and his daughter Nina, there's clearly a declining dissatisfaction between him and his wife Olivia, who is a pill popper who has to nurse her hip pain. And that obviously makes her less attractive to Paul since she's also losing her youthful beauty with age. And Nina is still very fertile in her beauty. Despite all this, though, my empathy towards Nina vanishes. My empathy for her vanishes as she exhibits patterns of brat behavior, like insisting on spending more time with her friends Michelle and Fiona. Michelle, by the way, is a ridiculously toxic female character in this film, with much of her dialogue being these shallow fantasies about fucking Connor in a very Mina Suvari American Beauty way, but much worse. And Nina starts talking a blue streak about some grandiose fantasies she has. And they are twofold. First, she plans to kill her dad with a gun. And second, she wants to move away and become a stripper Ha ha, very funny to be poking fun at your previous film outing as a porn star. I see what you did there, Elisha. And it turns out the gun that Michelle brings over in the paper bag is really just hiding a bunch of porn DVDs, which I'm guessing Nina was watching prior to having another night of sleeping with her dad. And even Nina then comes up with an ulterior plan by using her hot clothing iron, which she uses on her cheerleader outfit, as a weapon to burn her dad's face with. But then when she lures her dad by having him close his eyes and sit on his bed while Nina plans to share a secret with him, all it takes is for him to say, I love you so very much, for Nina to change her mind. And it's her fault too, because she was caressing his face with her hand to tease him and groom him for his secret. And then Dot enters the house, slightly distracting her from taking action, only to impulsively tell him, I'm pregnant. You can open your eyes now. I know that when I made a reference to the virgin suicides earlier, I have labeled The Quiet as being more positive than that one. When I meant positive, I only meant that it didn't involve the lead character committing suicide from being locked and sheltered inside her house and not allowed to see any boys. I meant that the Quiet actually went deeper into exploring the hidden monsters lurking under the basement of the family house and how the toxic parents are a personification of those demons that this film really lets out into the open rather than hiding it behind some idyllic summer family photogenic image with glistening rays of sunlight awash on the surface. But while The Quiet aims to be more authentic, raw, and real, it's also very ugly to watch. All these insidious taboos coming to the surface and changing the physiology of the characters. The scene in the cafeteria where Nina slams her lunch tray on the table and talks into Dot's ear, knowing that she's discovered that her deafness was staged the whole time, and then talking about her ambivalent feelings with her dad, saying that she loves and she hates him at the same time. And she's confused about that and is trying to, you know, trying to see if Dot understands what that means. And then, talking about how she plans to kill him with a gun. She's as scary in this scene as a female Macaulay Culkin or Elijah Wood. Like her innocence and her sweetness is completely gone by this point. She clearly looks possessed by a phonic demon who's desperate to break out of the dungeon and unleash revenge. And, she also talks about her secret kink that she likes to perform on her dad, which I am not going to say in this review because it makes my stomach churn. Blech. Oh, yeah. And then later in the bedroom, when she talks about killing her dad with her fabric iron and then burning her teddy bear's face with it as a demonstration, she's probing Dot's deafness, exploiting her stage deafness and saying, it's so great that you cannot hear Dot. Otherwise, you'd technically be an accomplice. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I also need to talk about Connor here too. The basketball player played by, I think it's Sean Ashmore, I think his name is. Hang on one second. I remember him playing Pyro in the first three X-Men movies. I remember him very well. Sean Ashmore. Yep, that's him all right. Yeah, he plays Connor in this film. And he's sitting by the pool with Dot in one scene and talking about Okay, I don't remember if it was that scene or the scene at the diner where Dot is just mindlessly stirring around her milkshake where he says, "I picture you being naked." And then at the scene where they're sitting by the pool and he's, confessing that he whacked off 4 times, that he was like really, really horny thinking about Dot, and that he came 4 times, and also talking about the size of his dick when it's erect versus when it's not, like, ah, yeah. Even Connor, a basketball player who seems like a genuinely nice guy, really, when I start to get to know him in the film a little bit more, he just says some things that are just like, really, really generic faux porn star script material right there. And so Dot is really the only character with any justification to unleash her secrets. She she ends up murdering Nina's dad. And that's only because Paul was attempting to rape his daughter as a way of getting revenge against the lie she made about being pregnant, which he discovers when he finds her tampons in the purse he gifted her. And poor Nina, oh, she tries begging for her dad's love while she cries, as Paul tries pinning her on the bed to pull off her panties and do you know what. That's when Dot comes up behind him and strangles him brutally with a piano wire. Then Nina breaks down psychologically. She cries with both anger and pain, resenting her momentarily for the fact that this is a secret that she had been closely guarding, really, really well. And that now it's like, after discovering that Dot was actually faking her deafness in a moment where she happened to come home one day and Dot was playing at the piano, and then one of the strings on the piano breaks, and Dot Dot reacts to the string breaking on the piano by saying shit, which really confused and surprised Nina, but obviously revealed the fact that that Dot was definitely not really deaf all along. And I'll get to more of that in a little bit. Obviously, Nina realizes that she has to be grateful now to Dot for having saved her. I strongly would have appreciated it, though, if the film had showed flashbacks of Dot's father, because it would have deepened the effect even more, so as to show how lucky she was, and why her father's death has turned her into a guardian angel for Nina, who is now fatherless at this point. Because all that I know is that Dot had gone deaf after her mother passed away, or it's it's like the trauma of the grief that had now started settling in when Dot had lost her mother, had caused her to put up this invisible glass wall, where it's like she didn't want to talk to anybody, did not want to connect with the outside world in any way except with her dad. She said, or she tells Nina later on when they're burying the dress by the river under that beautiful full moon, that it was their secret. If anyone has ever seen the movie Voice from the Stone, I highly recommend checking that film out because I think that film is a lot like Dot's story in a sense. Like she uses silence as a way of protecting herself. As Dot would later say, lies are what protect us. Of course, it has to be lies with sincerity and with good intention to it, because obviously the lie that she was using, just like the young boy in Voice in the Stone, he went completely silent after his mother died. And it was only when Emilia Clarke's character, the nurse, came along that she became like the ghost whisperer for him, like spirit whisperer that would gradually awaken the boy's soul inside to move him to speak again. And so similar things kind of goes on here. I think Voice from the Stone did a much better job going into the psychological and spiritual symbolism behind deafness and um, voluntarily being silent and choosing not to interact with other people except those that you have like a special psychosocial relationship with. I mean, you know, it's it really, really, is a very powerful thing. Just being able to essentially make yourself appear just like the outside world means nothing. That it's like your inside world is what really, really matters, the world of your own well-preserved emotions. And it was only at the right time that Nina was able to that Dot was able to read into Nina's pain and turmoil that she was experiencing so that Dot could come forth and save her from that monster of a father. Pretty soon after that, um, Nina isn't just fatherless, but also motherless. Because now Olivia ends up fabricating a lie to make it appear that she killed her and not Nina, using her addiction to pain medication as clout to define her as mentally ill and needing to go away for a while. Well, this is definitely what sets Nina free, yeah? And it does bring the film full circle just perfectly, yeah? Which is where Dot's narration proves fitting and sincere. Now she says that she always visualized nobody coming to her funeral, that she reached her goal of being invisible, except that while other people can ignore you, you can't help but notice other people. And that final image where she and Nina are sitting at the piano playing classical songs together is really sweet to watch. As the morning sun shines through the white curtains, the room bathed in a soft glow as the two girls sit and embrace a moment together at the piano, alone but happy together. And that's my review on The Quiet. As I said, pretty close resemblance to Voice from the Stone, though I will say there is archetypal symbolism about the ideal mother in spiritual form, which is better explored in that film than it is here. I feel there is some hinting at the symbolism of silence, the um like the whole trip to the underworld to contemplate and process being a survivor of grief and processing the world around them and deciding upon who they choose to speak to, and learning to transmute their hidden emotions in a way that they end up being counsel to those who are also troubled. It's something that, you know, is not as well explored in this movie as it is in Voice from the Stone, though, which is why I still recommend that movie. I want to say, though, that Dot's deep connection to her inner world of emotions gave her the strength to be a good observer. But it could just be that she was simply a sponge or a walking mirror for other people's psychic waste to project onto her, since she was really good at listening without responding, only responding when when the moment was right, when the right circumstances moved her to do so. Yeah, I mean, I can't really probe any deeper into this film beyond just those few impressions that I receive. It's quite it's quite a mirror though in itself. Like the characters in this film definitely show some very, very monstrous sides to their personalities. And it's like there's a fine line that I as the viewer walk when watching this film, because like there part of me ventures onto one half of, of my bias, where I want to empathize and feel sorry for these characters. Whereas like the other foot steps on the other half of this bias, where it's like these characters are pretty unlikable because of the things that they say. I mean, who in their right mind would want to hear a basketball player talking about, how nice and big his dick is when it gets erect? But then again, these are the types of things that you have to presume people like that have going on in their minds all the time. They probably talk about this with like their other jock buddies in the locker room. That's just one example. Or like the typical cheerleaders that talk about how they want to get banged by the basketball team. I mean, it's obvious that Jamie Babbitt specialized in these topics surrounding teen angst. I've never seen any of her work. I am aware of that movie, but I'm a cheerleader. I always used to see the VHS of that film back in like what, the late 90s when that film came out. So obviously she loves going deep into that realm of existence for high school teenagers. But overall, I do enjoy coming back to this film again and again. Interestingly enough, there's something about this film that, despite the complicated feelings that this film evokes, I still enjoy coming back to it and reliving the nostalgia of it. I wouldn't exactly say that it's a comfort film, but it is one that I do get something different out of it every time. I feel like even when I'm reliving all the same images, the same scenes, beat by beat, I come out feeling like it was a different journey every time. I just hope that other people watching this review who want to watch this movie are persuaded by my particular viewpoint here. But yeah, anyways, that's all I have to say for this review. And as usual, promoting Mega Media Exchange here. Shout out to you guys. Love you forever. Discount DVDs, Blu-rays, video games, and CDs. And yeah, I've obviously, as usual, I have my links down below that I'm posting since the money that I'm trying to make from this channel is going to be going towards visiting Sedona, Arizona, and that Tantra school out there. So, anyways, hope you enjoyed my nightly storytelling of the great mysteries of the quiet. And with that, adios and see you on the flip side of the reel, everyone. Ciao. One final thing that I wanted to recapitulate on is that I did mention that this film was a somewhat autobiographical film for me for the time it was released, and that I was going to break down the story of that here in this review. So, this is just to let all you viewers know that the most beautiful people in life are definitely the ones that carry the most hurt, the most wounds. And that's what happened with me. What happened between Nina and her dad in the film was similar to what happened between my maternal grandmother and I. Thankfully, I'm far away from her as of 2010 because at the time when this film came out, she was a helicopter guardian in the worst way. I was living with her at the time when I was going to college, since I didn't want to live in the dorms. She steamrolled me and emotionally abused me. I felt spoiled by her, but she was also very overprotective and selective about the friends I could hang out with and the girls I wanted to date, which also meant that I wasn't very dateable because my grandmother's hold over me lowered my attractor field as she was working psychically through all those girls to see me as unattractive. She ruled my life with an iron hand, and she would often cushion the blow of her gaslighting by spoiling me with rich tasting, high calorie food. So, when Nina in the movie self-criticized herself on how fat she was, even though she's clearly not, she's got body dysmorphia because her body image is out of touch with body reality. That's the impact, the consequence of sexual abuse. I mean, be it, benign or extreme, incestuous or whatever, she was emotionally manipulated, as was also the case with my maternal grandmother, so as to be unstable, to feel her own emotions outside of what her father dictated her to feel. Even going so far as buying a purse for her for no reason other than to buy her love. It wasn't her birthday, and it wasn't a reward for getting straight A's. After all, she admits at one point that she got a B minus on a test while her friend Michelle got a C. And yet, Paul tells her that she could do better. Switching back to my grandmother, I was criticized for wanting to be more of a creative artist and make a living off my own work rather than, being a teacher or working as a sound engineer at a music festival. She always criticized me for not being realistic. And now that I'm on disability, I've gained weight and I'm having to see a gut doctor so as to treat the root of my emotional trauma that had robbed me of my own agency as a result of my grandmother's helicopter parenting up through 2010. I developed extreme anxiety towards strong, feminist, masculine, butch type women, or women who are just emotionally callous and distant, especially since I'm still a clingy man at heart who needs to be with a woman who anchors me in security and shelter. And the whole emotional unavailability thing is not something that I can take very well. My grandmother did pass away after her 100th birthday in April 2023. And so I'm free of her in a sense. But I'm healing from the healing from emotional abuse continues to this day. I'm still digesting the anger I felt from the masking my grandmother would use to cover up her own covert manipulation, which has consequentially made me impressionable to other women and men to some degree, because I was always labeled as a nice guy when really the nice part was to stave off any conflict that would have to then test my resilience to have a strong ego and strong emotional bias. And unfortunately, as society is structured right now, the evil of women continue to thrive in society. As I continue to be a resource object, the male equivalent of Nina being a sex object. Basically, I'm only good looking to women if I'm made of money. That usually seems to be the case, from watching a lot of Jordan Peterson. A high beta score, though, is not enough. Having equal parts alpha and beta is what I strive for. So in my last video for passengers, I brought up that I had gut problems. The reason for this is because I got diagnosed with Gilbert's syndrome, which explains the disgustipation I have with processing anger, which is the primary emotion that rules the liver, according to Chinese medicine. And so a primary symptom of Gilbert's syndrome is a low bilirubin count. I'm having to now work with a gut doctor to get my stool and my saliva looked at, which will then determine what my diet plan is going to be, as well as what supplements I'll need to take, to aid in jump-starting my digestive and detox process in my gut to, effectively help me through a healing process that's going to be a journey towards wholeness and homeostasis. Possibly I'll have to go back to working with my acupuncturist, who I started working with in November 2022, and have her work as an adjunct to the treatment plan laid out by my gut doctor. Anyhow, I just had to provide closure to the discussion that I started in this movie review, because I did say that I was going to talk about how this film was somewhat autobiographical for me. So now I got it out of my system. So yeah, anyways, just had to add that additional anecdote on. And once again, thank you for watching my review. And see you in the next one, fellow reelers. Ciao.